is Lynn, and I'm a Humane Education Specialist for the Humane Society of San Bernardino Valley.
Hi, I'm Officer Padilla, and I'm a Humane Officer for the Humane Society of San Bernardino Valley.
Hi, I'm Tammy, and I am Dakota's mom and Zoraya's grandmother.
And I'm Zoraya, and I'm in the 9th grade.
And today we're going to be discovering how to take care of animals. And in doing so, we're going to be reading a book called Buddy Unchained. Buddy Unchained was written by Daisy Bix. The illustrator is Joe Hyatt, and the publisher is Griffon Press. In trying to find out a little bit more about Buddy Unchained, I looked at the back cover, and it says that Joe Hyatt, who is the illustrator, actually has a dog that was a rescue dog. He came from an abusive home, and he was found wandering the streets. And this dog, who's named Turtle, is the model for Buddy Unchained. So you're going to see that his dog Turtle looks very much like Buddy, who is in our book. I also looked in the front cover, and it says that Buddy's story shows that a neglected or abused dog can be rescued to live a good life in a new home through the efforts of those who care. Those words reminded me of a young man named Nkosi Johnson. And Nkosi was living in South Africa. And when his mom passed away from a disease called AIDS, he was adopted by Mrs. Johnson. And when it came time for Nkosi to go to school, there were some people who didn't understand whether it was really safe for him to be attending school. So he spent a lot of his time educating others about his disease, about AIDS. He is remembered by these words: do all you can with what you have, and the time you have, in the place you are. So thinking about what we can do with all we can, let's start reading Buddy Unchained. Not long ago, I was chosen by a family to live with them. This word, Tammy, chosen, makes me think of our decisions that we make and the choices that we make and the consequences of those choices and decisions. And I was thinking of you and your family in Dakota, and I was wondering, did you choose Dakota, or what made you think him?
Yes, I chose Dakota, and the decision I had to think about is finances, and was my place big enough, and if I had the time to spend that it takes to train him and to pay, to give to him. And I did, and so I adopted him. And he's been a blessing to our family.
And as we continue on, it says, I have food in my bowl, and I have clean water to drink. Now, I know that he has water in his home, and I know that sometimes he might tip it over. And so if he tips over his water dish, is there any other way that he can get water?
Dakota does, yes. Dakota has a water spout that's connected to our faucet outside of it, and he touches his nose and he gets water. But it's in the shade, so the water comes out. It's temperature controlled. So yes, Dakota always has water, inside and outside.
And what about the law, Officer Padilla, regarding food and water for animals?
The state of California requires animals to have water available 24/7. The food, you can feed your dog in the morning, and depending on the dog, within a couple of minutes, the food is going to be gone. But water must be available. It has to be potable water. It has to be clean and fresh. And that's what coming from the state law.
Okay. And when we continue on again, it says, sometimes I get a treat. So Zoraya, if you were going to give Dakota a treat, how would you do that?
First, I'd ask my grandma if I could give him a treat, because it's not very nice to give a dog food without asking the owner permission, because you don't know how it could affect the dog.
That's being very respectful, not only to your grandmother, but being respectful to Dakota.
Yes, he he will not eat treats normally when we're out. He doesn't eat them at home, but she can try to feed them.
So how are you going to do that, Zariah?
I'm gonna hold my hand out like this, and because if I hold it like this, he might nibble on my fingers.
Okay.
Take him. Take him up front.
He doesn't want it.
And that's fine. You know, sometimes we choose to eat things, sometimes we choose not to eat
Very
things.
picky. Very picky eater.
How about this? Would he like meat bones?
No, he will not. I don't give him meat bones because in case he could splinter in his stomach or in his throat and puncture his stomach or his intestines. So I don't give him meat bones.
And now they're going to take Dakota for a walk. So Officer Padilla, what is going to be required of them when they take a dog for a walk? What does the law say?
Most cities have a leash law, which requires the animal to be restrained by a leash and a collar when you take him out for a walk. Be careful when you put a leash on or a collar on the dog. It has to be able to put at least 3 fingers underneath. You can't really do it too tight because then, of course, it's going to create a problem with the dog. The leash or the dog has to be walked by an able-bodied person. That means that, in this case, Dakota cannot be walked by a 2-year-old kid. If Dakota chooses to, it can drag the person. It has to be somebody that is able to control the dog. Now, there's exceptions where dogs can be so well trained that a little kid can do it. Those are exceptions. But by the majority has to be done by an able-bodied person.
So that leash law actually protects the dog, so it's not going to run into traffic. It protects those other people who are going for a walk, so the dog won't come up and bother them.
It's actually for the safety of the animal and safety of the person as well. You don't want a dog to drag you across traffic lanes because he saw a cat or got spooked or anything like that. You have to be able to control the dog. Sometimes, you've seen people with 2 or 3 dogs. That can be a little dangerous, especially because you don't know exactly what is going on through the dog's mind. So you have to be able to control the animals. If there's too many of them and you can't control them, then you may be infringing upon the law.
So, Shariah, you're going to demonstrate how to take Dakota for a walk. One thing that you always do, because the dogs are barefoot, they don't wear shoes. So one thing you always do before you take a dog for a walk is you take your hand and you feel the sidewalk, you feel the cement, because we don't want their pads to get burned. And if you come to a stop sign or if you come to a signal light, then they're standing there on that hot cement. So we always need to be thinking about their care. So, would you like to demonstrate how you're going to take Dakota for a walk? And do you do that by yourself?
No, usually my grandma is with me.
Okay. Do you ask permission first, or do you just go ahead and take Dakota for a walk?
I ask for permission.
Okay. So he's got those 2 or 3 finger spaces between the neck and his collar, and we've got that leash on. And would you show us how we should hold that leash, please? Okay. Okay, put your hand through the loop, and then you're going to hold on. What would happen if you just held on to the loop?
If something were to catch his attention and he ran after it, it'd be ripped from my grip if I held it like this.
Okay, so you might lose him. So would you like to take Dakota for a walk?
Sure. Come on, Cody.
Okay, bring it back. Come on. Where's Mom?
And while you're up, do you ever play with Dakota? Does he like to play?
Yes, he's a very playful dog.
Do you,
That's as far as I got. You want to go play? Okay.
Is it okay if I let him off the leash?
Sure.
yeah.
I'm not interested.
Yeah, he don't want to.
Oh, heard of it.
Yeah, he did. Get it, get your toy.
No, not today.
Tell him about the harness.
I don't know about the harness.
Oh, this He has a special collar. It's called a gentle leader, and the gentle leader stops him from pulling on me because he's so large, and he can drag me down if I didn't have this.
So, Tammy, does he follow directions pretty well? Our story says that they teach me to know what they want from me. So, how do you let Dakota know what you want?
Well, I tell him what I want, and I've taken the time to train him, and so he knows my command when I tell him to do certain things, so he will do it. Like, I tell him to go to his bed, he'll go to his bed. I tell him to sit, he'll sit. I tell him down, and he'll go down. But I use hand signals also.
So he knows verbal commands and he knows hand signals. Would you share with us some of those hand signals?
Sure. Hey, Dakota. Stay.
Our story continues. It says, I used to live in a different place. I slept alone in the garage. So does Dakota sleep in the garage?
No, he sleeps with my grandma.
He sleeps with your grandma. On her bed?
No, he's too big for that, but he used to.
He used to when he was younger?
Yeah.
So does he just sleep beside her in the bed?
Yeah.
Okay.
He has
So
his own bed, twin bed.
he has his own twin bed. Okay. So, Officer Padilla, when we're talking about shelter and, sleeping in a garage, or the safe place for an animal, what does the law say about shelter?
Shelter must be provided, and shelter has to have at least 4 walls and a roof, and of course a floor. Many times we've gone over to check on some animals where there's no bottom on the doghouse, or there's no roof, or when it rains it leaks and water goes through. You have to be able to maintain or be dry if it's a dog chooses to be in a shelter inside a house, or to be cool if it's during the summertime. Some dogs, like I've had a couple of dogs that when it rains they like to sit out in the middle of the rain. That's okay, as long as they have shelter available. They can choose what to do or when to go in and be away from the elements at that time. So dog not using its own shelter doesn't mean that you have the right to take it away. It must be present. The dog is outside, it must be present. Some people choose, like in Tammy's case, to bring the dog inside. If he spends most of the time inside and just goes out to use the bathroom, he's not required to have a shelter because he's got a whole house to be in. Now, if he's gonna be outside at any given time and be left outside, then that's a different story. But most people would choose to have their dogs inside. My dogs are inside and outside as well. They have a dog house outside, but they also have their bed inside the house.
If it's a very hot day, is the dog house necessarily proper shelter?
Sometimes it's not, because you can have a little house in the middle of the yard out in the sun, and that's not going to protect the animal from the sun as much. Sometimes it's best to try to put them under a shade, nice tree, trying to get where the doghouse is going to get a little cool draft. You have to think about yourself as well. If you can stand out there for a couple of hours comfortably, then your dog may be able to do that as well. So whatever it's comfortable for you, maybe it should be the same for your dog.
So on a hot day with all the rays of the sun coming down on the roof of that doghouse, how are you going to know? Is there any equipment that you use that you can tell the temperature inside the doghouse and compare it to outside?
We usually carry a thermometer with us, where it's a surface thermometer, where you can just point, shoot, and it's going to tell you, and it's going to give you the temperature on the outside, around, or inside. Inside a doghouse, especially igloos or any other kind of shelters that are commercially available out there, it's not just enough. Again, if you go and you can just test the temperature yourself. Put your arm inside, put your head inside the doghouse. Why not? If it's cool, then it's okay. Now, days are going to be 100 degrees outside, 110 degrees outside. Doghouse is not going to be enough. That's where water also has to be available 24/7, fresh water. And when I say fresh water, it doesn't mean that just a bowl of water in the middle of the yard as well. You have to make sure that it's at least covered somehow so it doesn't get boiling hot. Who likes to have a drink of boiling hot water when it's 100 degrees outside? So bottom line is you have to think about your comfort and the dog's as well. If you're not okay with that, why should your dog be?
So every day I was put outside. My collar was clipped to a chain, and when it rained, my fur was wet clear through. Sometimes people think that just because an animal has a fur coat, that fur coat is going to protect them. And as we know, and I'm sure that you have seen, on cases that you have gone out to with dogs in the rain, that they're soaking wet, that fur coat really does not protect them. So once in a while, kids threw things at me. I couldn't protect myself. I don't know why they did that. Zariah, why would people your age be cruel to animals?
Sometimes they do it to belittle other people because they don't feel powerful where they usually are, so they do it to make themselves feel more powerful, even though it's not right.
Officer Padilla, what do you find why are people cruel to animals?
The first thing that comes to my mind will be ignorance. They don't believe that the animal feels like we do. They don't believe the animal has any feelings. Therefore, it's just an ornament, or it's just something that is going to be in the backyard. They don't think about that as a living, breathing being that needs attention, that needs care. And if we as parents allowed our kids to bully, and that's what it is, to bully animals, who's to stop them from bullying their classmates? Mm-hmm. To me, it's just a type of bullying. Mm-hmm. They are pushing an animal around that has no way of defending themselves. Now we have the problem now where we have a dog that it's tied up. It's unable to protect himself, and people keep pushing it and pushing it. Guess what? The dog is gonna, at one point, try to defend himself. Mm-hmm. And that's when we have bites. That's when we have problems with animals biting. That's when we have problems with animals not behaving because they don't know any better. They've been living at the end of a chain all their lives. They don't know how to interact. They don't know how to behave. They don't know how to be loved or love somebody else.
So when I got twisted in the chain, I couldn't sit down or move until someone from the house came and untangled it. I was really thinking of those words, that I couldn't sit down or move. And I remember one case that we went out on, there was a little Chihuahua, and it was on a chain. It had gone around and around and around the tree. And that Chihuahua had like 5 inches from its neck to the tree, and it couldn't move. So thinking also, that said that someone came from the house and they untangled Buddy from the chain. And I'm thinking, here they were inside the house. They untangled Buddy, and then they just went right back in, not paying any attention to him. So I also started thinking about the laws about chaining animals. And I thought about entanglement, and I thought about them not having room to exercise, like sit down or move. So what about the law on addressing chaining?
The state has a couple of laws in regards to animals and tethering and animals being tied up. There's been a couple of laws that have been passed. It is illegal to maintain your dog tied to a fixed point in your yard. There's an option to that, which is the tethered, which is a kind of a clothesline to 2 points and having the dog chained to the middle, something that can move around from place to place. We don't like to see dogs chained up, period. They're more likely to become aggressive. But it's the law. The law requires the animals to be untethered. So when we come across situations, we try to help people if that's absolutely the last thing they can do to keep their animal in the yard. Then we try to help them, set up that. Although we hate to see the animals chained up or tied up like that. But bottom line is, your dog wants to be part of the family. The dog wants to be part of your family. It's part of your family once you accept them into your home. You are the dad, you are the brother, you are the person in charge of them. We like to see that. We like to see the animal being part of that family, not in the backyard. Nobody's gonna do anything with a dog that it's in the backyard. That's just an ornament, not a pet.
Many days, those people forgot to change the water in my dish. It tasted bad. I was so thirsty, I drank it anyway. Sometimes they forgot to feed me, and I was hungry most of the time. And the illustrator shows this dog just looking up into the home, looking up into the window, hoping that someone might come out and feed him. When it got very cold, my paws hurt. So Dariah, do you think that Dakota can suffer? Do you think that he could feel pain? Do you think that he could hurt? Does he have those feelings?
Yes, because he's a living thing, and most living things feel things because that's what they are, they're living.
Okay. One day I was so cold that I laid down and I couldn't get up. A person I didn't know came and took off my chain, and he took me away from that place. So Officer Padilla, who was that person that came and took Buddy away?
We as humane officers or animal control officers have the power to take animals away from the owners if they're not taking care of them properly. There's provisions within the law that would allow us to take an animal if it's a life or death situation. In this case, the animal or this dog, as is narrating, it was so cold he just fell asleep on the snow. We would have taken that animal away from the owner because he was out in the cold, and bottom line, he will die or freeze to death. So I'm assuming that in this case could have been an animal control officer or a humane officer, the one that may have done something like that.
So when there's an emergency, and they call it exigent circumstances, that you are allowed to come on a person's property, and you are allowed to remove those animals from the property.
That's correct.
So the officer brought me to a place where they took care of me, and a person clipped my claws because they were so long I could hardly walk. And what happens is those claws grow and grow and grow, and they can grow into the pads of an animal's foot. When I was feeling all right again, they put me into a place with food and water. What do you think that place was, Araya?
Most likely like an animal shelter or rescue center.
A rescue center, Humane Society. The people I live with now came to visit. They chose me to be part of their family for always, and they call me Buddy. Good dog, Buddy, they say to me every day, and they give me pats and hugs. I have friends to play with. I have my real home, and now I have everything. So a thinking question. Now I have everything. If someone were to ask you what that means, or to ask you if you have everything, what would everything be to you?
For me, everything would be that I have like a home where people love me and always want me there. Like they look forward to seeing me, like, a house full of pets or a holiday with family. That'd be for me everything.
What's everything to you, Tammy?
Making sure my animals have a safe place and for me to provide them a safe place to live.
What's everything to you, Officer Padilla?
Everything will be for a pet, will be being in a safe place, being loved and cared for. Pretty much, bottom line.
Okay, everything for me means that everyone is working together to realize their potential, to realize you have power, and that you have the ability to make a peaceful difference for our world. So we wish you well, and please take care of those animals, take care of yourself, and take care of others, and take care of our planet. Thank you very much for visiting with us. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.